Now wait, let me get this straight.
What?
You were in Virginia working with the symphony orchestra.
Yes.
Then you went to Portland.
And did the Oregon
And you did the Oregon Symphony.
Four
Orchestra. All right.
symphonies.
In between there, you do your love letters to Lenny lecture.
Yes.
You tape a TV show because
Right.
you're hosting a weekly show. You just finished.
You are miraculous the way you know all
Well, no,
this.
because you told me about it. You just
Yes.
finished a year on Broadway, standing in for Cheetah Rivera and going on in Kiss of the Spider Woman.
Yes.
You're writing a cookbook.
Right.
You did a holiday album.
Exactly.
You're doing paper dolls. How
Right.
did you find the time to sit down with me? We'll find out. Hi, everyone. We're backstage at Tropworld. Carol Lawrence is going to join us briefly right after this.
Absolutely. Anytime.
And we're back at Tropworld, where the very lovely, talented, and extremely busy Carol Lawrence joins us.
Yeah.
I got to do one thing because I don't get
What?
to do this with many friends.
What?
Hi.
Oh, David, it's so good to see you.
I've
We haven't seen each other since I cooked you spaghetti.
No, we've seen each other since
Have
then.
we?
Yeah, but Spaghetti was at Harrah's,
Right.
and then you did the Trump Plaza date
That's
with
right.
with your son Michael,
That's
and now you're here
right.
with Joan Rivers.
I made pasta fagioli for them.
Oh, really? I didn't get any
And
of that.
somebody in our orchestra tonight said, do you remember when you did No No Nanette and you made spaghetti for the company? Do we get it tonight?
That was at the Claridge.
That was at the Claridge. And I said, no, I don't have time to cook spaghetti. We barely had time to get the show on tonight.
The woman has played every place in town, and
Almost.
including places that probably have closed already.
Right, probably, unfortunately. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know where to begin with you because
I
you.
know, it's hard.
Why are you so busy? I mean, is it because you want to be or because you have to be?
Well, I love working, David. You know that. For one thing, I've been a ham all my life. But more than that, I need to be doing important things, meaningful things, and I need to be earning a living. I'm not married. I don't have a sugar daddy anyplace. And I love the way that my life is taking a nice curve. I'm still doing Atlantic City. I just closed in Vegas with Rich Little. I'm doing my symphonies and my wonderful lectures. I hope you can come because it is a love letter to Leonard Bernstein.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. How did that project develop?
I was asked because this year would have been Leonard Bernstein's 75th birthday. And the Metropolitan Museum of Art has a masterpiece series in which they were going to honor for one whole week Leonard Bernstein and his omnibus programs, and Humphrey Burton, who has just written his biography that was allowed by the entire Bernstein family, so he had access to the archives and all of Lenny's writings and his correspondence. Humphrey helped me put this together, and I was asked to merely chronicle his musical contribution to musical comedy. And I began, it took me a year to put together, and I was so nervous. I mean, to debut at the Met, it's like singing an aria at the Metropolitan Opera. And
But there was no band behind you, though.
No, but I had a pianist, and I had slides, and I had, of course, the underscoring of all of his music, because he did such fabulous musicals. On the Town, Wonderful Town, West Side Story, Candide. And I sang some of the songs from them, and I gave a lot of the funny anecdotes from West Side Story from our very first audition. My first meeting with Leonard Bernstein was in Cheryl Crawford's office, all right? Do we have time to tell?
Like I said, we were going to do like 17, 18 minutes, and you said, oh, I could tell my life story. You could tell 5 minutes of the West Side Story.
Okay.
But let's talk West Side Story.
All right. The first time I met Lenny was it was like a cattle call for all of the William Morris clients who sort of looked teenage. I was teenage, but you saw these people in leather jackets running around looking butch. And Bruce Savan was our agent, and he had a clipboard like yours with a laundry list of names. We were in Cheryl Crawford's outer office, and then they would open the door to her inner office and say, next! And Bruce would say, okay, what are you going to sing? We were told to sing our favorite audition piece and an aria if you got past that first hurdle. So I went to Bruce, and I said, I'm going to sing When Does This Feeling Go Away? And then I'll sing Un Bel Dì. And he said, Un Bel Dì? You'd never make it. This is my agent. The door opens, they say next. So without another word, we very obediently walked inside. On this side of a very narrow wall was a settee, on which sat Arthur Lawrence, Stephen Sondheim, Jerry Robbins, and Leonard Bernstein, looking more gorgeous than any picture I've ever seen. he took my breath away. He was just, and so smiling and charming. The end of the room was a big desk behind which Cheryl Crawford, the producer, sat. And on this side was a little spinet at which Peter Howard, my pianist, sat.
So no pressure.
No pressure at all. So Bruce said, she's going to sing When Does This Feeling Go Away? And I sang it. And then Leonard Bernstein said, thank you, darling. Would you sing an aria? At which point, my agent went, an aria, put his hands over his ears, went in the corner, and knelt down on his knees. And we all went aghast. That's my cheerleading section, right? And thank God Peter whipped into the introduction of Umbel and somehow, David, I sang it as close to Leonard Bernstein as I am to you. I sang that aria. At the end of it, Leonard stood up and took my hand, and he said, that was lovely, Miss Lawrence, and turned to Bruce, and he said, and would you get up from that ridiculous position, because I want to hear her sing it in a theater. I almost kissed him. I've never been so impressed with a sweet man, even if he didn't feel that way. I got to sing it in a theater, of course, and I did 13 auditions for the
Right, and subsequently, Actors Equity developed the Carol Lawrence rule.
Right. The rule says, and I didn't know about it. I had nothing to do about it. I found out about this a year ago. It is called the Carol Lawrence rule. It says you cannot audition anyone for a Broadway show more than 3 times without then paying them to come, which I think is fair. You should be able to make up your mind. But Jerry Robbins is a perfectionist, and I love Jerry. But he took 2.5 years to cast it. You could get too old for the part.
You had said, to try and make a long story short, and an extraordinarily interesting story short, that Jerry Robbins, he got his best out of you by degrading you.
Well, Jerry had never directed a play until then, David. He had only been a choreographer, and it's accepted decorum that a choreographer really tries to incite you to riot. Because as a dancer, when the adrenaline is flowing and somebody says, you're no good, you rotten dance, you go, I am so, and the adrenaline flies and you leap higher, you turn faster, and that's sort of what he wants to get out of you, is that you prove him wrong. Well, an actor cannot prove you wrong at being more poignant in an angry way. You can't, you know. So Jerry would sort of rip us to pieces, especially Larry Kurt and me, because we were Romeo and Juliet. And we would be in a puddle of emotional blood on the floor, and Leonard Bernstein would walk up, put his arms around us and say, let's go to the balconies, you know, let's work on the wedding section or whatever. And he would play the piano for us. He would be our accompanist. And he would say, he'd hold my face like this and say, that was so beautiful. But if it doesn't feel good, tell me, because I'll change it. I'll change it for you. I'll change it for you. Change it. I beg your pardon. Please. You never wanted him to change a thing. And he nursed us and encouraged, because he was such a great teacher, looking at those omnibus shows.
But that must have made you an emotional wreck. I mean, to get beaten up by Jerry Robbins all day long.
Back together.
And then Lenny would put you back together.
Was our savior in that sense, is that I think a lot of us would have just given in to a demoralized opinion of ourselves and never delivered, because we were never encouraged. People need to feel good or that they're valued, and Lenny did that to us.
When you went and did West Side Story, did any of you have any idea the significance that show was going to have in the musical theater? You knew it.
Very much so. Once you heard that score, once you read that beautiful script that Arthur Lawrence adapted, and particularly following the Shakespearean characters and sequence of the play, it was a gigantic step forward in theater. We were the first musical tragedy. Up till then, it was musical comedy. And it was an operatic score. And it was more dancing than anybody had ever seen. People were being killed left and right. There wasn't a star in sight. We were all very, very young, unknown, in blue jeans.
I think before West Side Story, the closest thing to tragedy was poor Judd's date in Oklahoma.
Yes, yes, and he never died.
He died, right.
He just was mean.
Right.
No, this was an absolute giant step forward, and we knew that if the critics and the American public would have a chance to hear it and to understand it, that they would love it. And out of town in Washington, D.C., I think I've told you the story, that we went after the show, had closed, and the death scene is so surprising to an audience that Romeo is killed. You should have gotten him off. And he dies in my arms, and they carry his body off to the bell, a single bell tolling, and the strains of Somewhere. And the curtain falls, and we ran to our places for the bows, and the curtain rose, and we stared at the audience, and they stared back, and we stared again. And I thought, oh, Lord, they didn't get it. They hate it. It's a flop. They didn't. And at that point, David, they leapt to their feet like Jerry Robbins had choreographed it and screamed and yelled and cried. And 85 times the curtain went up and down, and we all burst into tears. It was quite wonderful.
That's obviously a moment that it was going to be burned into your psyche
Yes,
forever.
Absolutely. And the same thing happened opening night on Broadway, and we knew that we had touched a nerve in the American public's heart, because at that time the headlines were all gang war. It's still, unfortunately, a giant problem in our world. So West Side Story is current. It's being done all the time.
And we're talking about a show that's almost 40 years old.
That's right, 37 years old.
There's a place for us, somewhere, a place for us. Take my hand, and we're halfway there. Hold my hand, and I'll take you there. Somehow, someday, somewhere.
All right, before we run out of time, let's take one
What we're
project
talking
after
about
that.
now.
Okay, Trinity Broadcasting, you've got your own show.
I do.
Which I believe is seen on the cable systems throughout
Throughout
the
the
country.
world.
Yeah, throughout the world.
Yeah.
Oh, you had mentioned that this is one of the
We
most
have the
widely seen.
largest complete network of 465 stations. It's seen in Russia, Europe, Philippines, New Zealand, North America, South America, Central America, probably by more people than any other. And it's doing so well, they're repeating it on Saturdays. And I have just done a Christmas album with my sons I happen to be very proud of. It is called The Gift Goes On, and my sons Christopher and Michael Goulet play the kings and the shepherds, and it is the story of Christmas that is accompanied by this incredible cutout paper doll book that is designed by Robin Woods, the most awarded doll designer living
look at
today.
that.
Madame Alexander died, and she is the most. You see, it has angels, it has the wonderful stable, and it's all told through the eyes of Jacob, a little crippled boy. I wrote the story, David, and in the story, he befriends Mary and makes room at the stable, pretends that his donkey is sick, so he brings him into the house, and he's healed by the end of the night. And my favorite part is that you can also purchase a script that allows you to be the narrator, your children to be the animals and the shepherds and the angels.
Well, it's like a
and the-
karaoke type of thing,
and you
isn't
get
it?
a tape that we've wiped all our voices off, and you can be all of the characters in the play. And can you imagine taking a video of your 6-year-old or 7-year-old child playing one of these characters in 10 years showing it to them? You see, we're going on home shopping next week.
I was about to say, how can people get this
They
home
can
shopping?
call the 800 number. Would you let me say it?
Absolutely.
1-800-243-9110. And it's really very inexpensive. The whole package is $19.95.
A bargain.
A bargain. And then if you want the script, it's $10 more with the other karaoke. But it tells a wonderful story, and it also uses contemporary, because it's like a whole Christmas show. I mean, we do chestnuts roasting on an open fire, we do The Gift Goes On, we do A Little Town of Bethlehem. So they're very familiar things. It's not like you're going to hear all original music. But it's stunning, and my sons sing really good.
I can vouch for I haven't heard
You've
Christopher.
heard Michael.
I've heard Michael, and What a shame there isn't a showcase for him somewhere in this country.
He's playing here. You know, he played with me.
Yes.
In Atlantic City and on cruise ships and with symphonies. Also, Chris has done symphonies with me, and he's currently going to be this very weekend with his father, Robert Goulet, at the Taj Mahal.
Which is interesting in itself, that you're all in town together.
All in town. I had hoped that maybe Michael could come and sing with me and then sing with his father and be the only performer at 2 casinos in one engagement, but it didn't work out. The timings are too close, so we couldn't do it.
Has he ever sung with Bob before?
No, this is the first time. So go and see them. I'm sure they'll be wonderful.
Something that's always intrigued me
What?
about you is your versatility and the fact that you always try and find a way to get back to Broadway. You did that last year by agreeing to be, and I hate to use the word because of your stature, but you were an understudy to Cheetah Rivera.
I was a standby.
Or standby. Let's say
Right,
standby
exactly.
in Kiss of the Spider Woman,
Yes,
and you went
I loved
on.
it. I loved it. It was Cheetah's idea. And, you know, we've been friends since West Side Story, and I've loved that woman. She is absolutely fantastic. And to even be in the same shoes, she let me wear her costumes. That's the first time. And she said, I wouldn't let anybody do that. Anybody do this, but I mean, only as Cheetah could say that. She's on the road now in the touring national company of it, and it's doing very, very well. It's a gutbuster of a role because you are on stage singing and dancing and climbing webs and flying and playing a varied character. You don't play just the Spider-Woman. You play a Russian countess. You play a Cuban showgirl. You play all these wonderful Marlene Dietrich, which I just did upstairs. You got to learn how not to be. It's delicious, and I would do it tomorrow morning again. I would love to create another role on Broadway before I die, and you'll have to write it for me, David.
I've never written a Broadway show
Well,
before, but
this is
I'll
the
give
first-
anything.
Exactly.
I'll give anything a shot. It's a very physically challenging role. I mean, right now they've got Vanessa Williams
Right.
doing the role, who is young enough to be your daughter.
Is she really? I wouldn't
think
say
so.
that, David, but if you did, it must be true.
Well, let's say she's very close to Michaal's age.
Is she really?
Yes.
Yeah, well, good for her.
But I mean, that says a lot for you.
It
And
does.
she did to be able to get up
Yeah.
there.
We're old war horses, and I think that we come from a regime of singing, dancing actresses, which I'm afraid are not being developed now because young people are not given all the platforms upon which we got to learn and be rotten and learn how to make it better and come back and try again. And that's part of what I think young people should, I guess, try to find places where they can experiment, even if it's regional, even if it's just what they've put together. A classroom doesn't do it, David. You got to do it in front of paying customers.
Milton Berle said there's no place to die anymore, no place to be.
Ah, no place to
No-
die.
no place to be bad.
to be bad. And that's the only way an actor knows. When you go out there and they go, boo, whoo, you're never going to do that again. I promise. I will never do that again. And when they applaud, then you feel better and then you strengthen whatever you did that they liked. And that's how actors learn. We are only mimics, you see, and we
Well,
don't
what
have a
they say,
lot of...
acting is not so much acting, but
Listening.
reacting. And listening and reacting.
Exactly, yeah. And singing and dancing and doing all those good things.
Well, I'm going to do something that I did at the top of the show that I only get to do when I have a friend sitting next to me. I get to kiss you goodnight.
Good night. Mwah.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, David.
Continued success with the Christmas album.
And you'll come and be a
everything.
guest on my show. He promised.
I promised I would.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
You got it.
Back with our calendar segment right after this.
Let's try it from the very beginning. Come on, Manny. Come on. Grab your cane. Manual, pet, settle down. Here we go. Everybody pick up your cane quickly now because I don't want you over-rehearsed. Are you ready? Hit it, Maestro, and smile, George. Are you ready? Here we go. And I'm putting on my top hat, tying my white tie, dancing my chance. Here we go, Manny. Walk now. Walk. Putting in my shirt front. Come on back. Putting in my shirt stuff. Polishing my nails. I'm stepping out my ditch to breathe an atmosphere that's simply Eric, is that your idea of rhythm, Eric? I certainly hope Eric's wife is on the pill, don't you? And I'm sure that you'll do my best when I step on the gas. Are you ready? We're gonna kick now. I'm putting on my top hat, tying my white tie, dancing my. Put your canes down. kiss. Give me a kiss, Bob. You're adorable. Give me a hat and a kiss. You're adorable. Thank you. Mwah. Mwah. Give him a bigger hand than that, ladies and gentlemen. What?
Well, if you want some good gossip from that weekend, Michael Goulet never did get a chance to sing with his mom at Tropworld. He did sing with his father, Bob Goulet, down at the Trump Taj Mahal, and according to very well-placed sources, Bob Goulet didn't want to share his son with Carol Lawrence that weekend. He wanted them all to himself. So Carol didn't get a chance to have a little mother-daughter reunion, and Michael didn't get a chance to become the first person in Atlantic City to work 2 casino hotels on the same night with both parents who were divorced in 1976, which would have been a really neat entry in the Atlantic City Trivia Hall of Fame. Anyway, if you're planning I know, shame on Bob. Bob, shame on you. We'll deal with you later. Anyway, if you're going to be in Atlantic City next weekend, the pickings are getting a little bit slim as we head into the holiday season. It's the way it goes because everybody's spending their money on holiday gifts and not on shows. But, there's always a but. Julio Iglesias, and they don't come any bigger than Julio, he'll be at the Taj Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night in the Edis Arena. If you've never seen him before, they call him the Spanish Sinatra. They have all kinds of different monikers for him. He is a wonderful entertainer. If you've got a few extra bucks, go check out Julio Iglesias at the Taj. Over at Harrah's, the Letterman are finishing a 2-week run in the Showcase of Stars series. Only Tony Butala from the original Letterman is still with the group, but he has checked out the replacements to make sure they sound just like the originals. Give it a shot over at Harrah's. And finally, at Trump Plaza, the biggest star you've never heard of, Charlie Prose, will be doing his annual holiday show. If you've never seen Charlie before, hard to describe in 20 seconds. He sings, he dances, he tells jokes, he plays the piano. Great band behind him. He's a hell of an entertainer. You ought to check out his holiday show. And that just about does it for this week's brand new show. I'm David Spatz. For all of us here at the show, and especially for our award-winning father-to-be producer, Jake Lancey Jr., thanks for being with us. We'll leave you now with the music of Carol Lawrence on stage at Tropworld. See you next week.
The David Spatz Show has been brought to you by Merv Griffin's Resorts, Atlantic City's #1 casino hotel.
A little fantasy will not fail. It's just as simple as ABC. Come up here, play with me. Turn off the lights and turn on your mind, and I can promise you, you will find you will like my plan, my sweetest fan, my leading man. Anywhere you